Hi there, welcome to this informational webinar on best practices for peer reviewers of AmeriCorps grants. My name is Alexis Grieve and I'm a program manager with ServeWyoming, and I'll be walking you through this information today. But before we begin, we just want to say a huge thank you for your time and energy. We know that you have busy lives and we can truly appreciate the time that you're taking to review these applications so that we can fund robust programs with AmeriCorps dollars. So thank you. I want to go over the presentation objectives. These are the goals that we hope you get out of this presentation today. We want to make sure that you understand the grant review process and your role as a peer reviewer. So in order to achieve that, we're going to review the components of the request for proposal, and you'll learn how to identify a great AmeriCorps program. You'll understand how to use the peer reviewers tool. And if anything is unclear, please make note of any questions that you have. We are available to assist you anytime you need. So if there's something that you didn't get out of this webinar, please don't hesitate to contact us and ask. We will have all of our contact information at the end of this webinar. So on our end, the staff review process looks a little something like this. We initially review the grant for missing information. We confirm the match, whether that's going to be in kind or cash match that they're projecting, and approximately the percentage that they're projecting. We make sure that any supplemental materials that they have been uploaded and that their contact information is current and relevant. Then we provide technical assistance to the applicants and to you, the peer reviewers. For the past few weeks, we've been working with programs to make sure that their applications are entered flawlessly into eGrants. And we are also, as I stated before, here to assist you as the peer reviewers with any questions that you have. We collect your peer review comments and scores, and we collate those. And at that point, our executive director will consult with the commissioners on our board to select the final grantees. Then we can move forward by notifying grantees of their award, how much they are awarded, and when they can begin their program. As a peer reviewer, you are the referee. And we appreciate the fact that you have signed on to do this. Again, it takes a lot of time and energy and effort, but we also are really grateful for your expertise and your intellectual insight. We really appreciate if you have past grant review experience, but if this is your first time reviewing a grant, that is also incredibly helpful to us because you can really give us kind of a fresh eyes perspective. And we're going to go over some of the things that we would like you to look over as you're going through this process. So you as the reviewer have a few steps. You are going to familiarize yourself with the original application. Many of these programs will have applications that have already been submitted in other grant cycles, and they may be in a recompete. A few of these are brand new programs that you will be looking at as well. Then you'll review and score those completed grant applications, and it's your insight that is going to be really valuable to us. And we like that you give us suggestions, questions, things that you need qualified so that the applicant can revise their proposal for clarity. We do have a clarification period after your scores are submitted. So if you think of these grant applications that you're about to look through as sort of the dress rehearsal for what will be the final performance, right? So it is not too late to tweak some of the issues that you see within these. So we really appreciate if you are honest and candid with anything that you see that might need to be shifted before we finally grant them. We always suggest a first read strategy. That looks a little something like reading through the application quickly once just to kind of get a sense of what the project looks like, what the target audience is, what their members will be used for, the population that it serves. And you'll take notes at this point kind of your initial impressions and highlights, as well as any questions. Then we suggest you go back and reread the application and do a much deeper critical analysis of it and reconsider the overall picture. So you're going to develop your critical thinking for each section, and I'm going to break down what those sections look like here in just a moment. You'll want to identify strengths and weaknesses that support your analysis. and then you'll complete the reviewer worksheet. And that reviewer worksheet will really be the perfect template for you to see if there are any gaps missing in these applications as you're going through them. Some of the identifiers of a well-written application include avoiding jargon and defining any acronyms, not using the first person, free from typos and grammatical errors, and using concise language. We like an application that avoids metaphors or flowery language. That's perfectly appropriate in creative writing, but of course in a grant application we want this to be pretty concise and clear, and it needs to include research and reason and best practices. Nothing that's just an emotional appeal, like I feel like this would be a really great program in my area. No, it needs to show that there's something quantifiable and a goal that they're really looking towards. Strengths and weaknesses that we will see in these applications. A strength is to clearly demonstrate the understanding of their need in their community and what this program is set out to, how this program is set out to address that need. Weaknesses occur when the criteria is not really addressed well, and that is a cause for concern. It's a red flag to us that shows that maybe the person who's the site supervisor or the program manager of this program doesn't quite know how to successfully implement this, which could impede it being successful and sustainable. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to walk through the different components of the application. These are some of the things that you are going to be looking over as you go through your application that you're reviewing. So the first thing that you'll see is the executive summary, and this is a really brief synthesis of the proposed program. It should be half a page or less, maybe a paragraph or a couple paragraphs. It should include the number of AmeriCorps members that the program is looking to use, what those members are going to be doing, and where they will be working, what the anticipated outcome of the project is at the end of it, how this applies to the focus area, which I'll speak to in just a moment, and then the investment of money, the amount of grant money that they are requesting and what that money will be matched with. So the focus areas for CNCS, which is Corporation for National and Community Service, there are 7 focus areas. And we like those projects to be in one of those 7 focus areas in order for this to be viable for AmeriCorps. So you just want to make sure that that focus area is within one of those, or that this application is in one of those focus areas, pardon me. And then the CNCS investment of money is the amount of requested funding from ServeWyoming for these AmeriCorps funds and how that will be matched. And please keep in mind that match can be cash or in kind. The next thing that you'll come to after the executive summary are the narratives. So this is about 50% of their program design. And this is where you will examine how that application demonstrates that AmeriCorps and AmeriCorps members are really well suited to solving the community problem. So some of the elements that we encourage you to look for is the intervention. And intervention is, the articulated way that they are going to problem solve for a specific issue in their community. And we want to make sure that it is clear what the target population is and what the role of those AmeriCorps members will be. The intervention is likely to lead to outcomes, and those outcomes need to be identified in the applicant's theory of change. In the logic model, we want to see meaningful progress in addressing that community problem. And then the rationale for using AmeriCorps members to deliver that intervention. That's something that is pretty critical for us to be able to make a case for. So it's important that we have defined service roles of AmeriCorps members that are going to contribute to this program. The intervention is really the activities, right? So I'm going to go a little deeper into what those interventions can look like. Examples of interventions can include professional development, after-school programs, mentoring, parent nights, creating partners in the community, etc. And so these interventions are really just strategies to accomplish outcomes. Every objective in this application needs to have at least one strategy or intervention associated with it. It would not make sense to read an application that has an outcome where it is absolutely not addressed how you're going to achieve that outcome. Performance measures. This is really where we get into those areas of focus. So the goals in the program design narrative needs to state how the team hopes to achieve and address the primary problems identified in the needs assessment. And so these performance measures need to be pretty clearly stated. And I do want to emphasize that in these focus areas that these performance measures will land in, it's okay to have more than one, but it's preferable for most applications to have just one performance measure. We have found in our time doing this that if you complicate a program, particularly if it's a newer program to AmeriCorps, with more than one performance measure, some of those outcomes become pretty muddy, and it's extremely difficult for them to find a sustainable way to keep enhancing those. Down here at the bottom, there's a note on output versus outcome, just as a brief reminder, and I would encourage you to kind of write this somewhere. This is something that can be incredibly confusing, but outputs are the items that you can actually count. So these are the quantitative things, right? Like the number of blank, the percentage of blank. The outcomes are the statements that kind of measure that change that the activity is working on. So our example here is there will be a 2% decrease in student absenteeism by the end of the first marking period from the previous year as measured by school records. So that's an outcome. So this is something that's a little bit more qualitative. The 5 elements of every outcome is that you need a quantifiable level of success, right? So we need to be able to prove that it is measurable, and measurable things can definitely range depending on the activity that the AmeriCorps members will be doing. So whether that's an increase in test scores, less absenteeism, you know, if they're doing a survey to kind of figure out if the outcomes were met, that's great. We just need to make sure that there's something measurable that they are going for after they complete this project. And there needs to be a specific deadline for completion. Again, we're going to focus on clearly identified target populations and then some kind of an assessment tool by which to measure their progress. Again, that could be looking at test scores, it could be looking at a survey. And then part of what you will be looking at is helping us judge how ambitious and realistic their objective is. It's oftentimes that you have a nonprofit that is so excited and gung-ho that they think that they can achieve so much with so little, and we really want you guys to be critically analytical about that and say like, hey, maybe your capacity is a little bit too ambitious. We don't know if you're actually going to be able to fulfill that, because ultimately our goal is to make sure that whatever their grant is written for is successful and sustainable. Here's an element identification image that will just kind of help you understand how we would sort of break down some of these application components, right? So as you read through this, you can see by the end of the grant period, 70% of high school seniors in the participating high schools who were reading below grade level in the 9th grade will achieve a rating of satisfactory on the county high school reading examination, a 20% increase over current levels. And you can see that that's a great sentence for an identification because we have the target population included in there, the long-term deadline, a measurement tool, which is built in, the baseline that they're working with, and then the quantitative level of success that they're trying to reach. As you look through the reviewer handbook, you'll really want to consider the evidence tier, right? And so these are some elements that we want to consider to make sure that as they have their application written, it will go on to be successful and sustainable. So some of these elements are that the applicant has clearly described what tier of evidence they have assigned to their intervention. We want to make sure that it describes the characteristics of the beneficiary population. It describes the characteristics of the population delivering the intervention. It describes the dosage, that is the frequency and duration, and the design of the intervention. It describes the context in which the intervention is delivered, the outcomes of the intervention, and any other evidence that will support their program. So again, this is really talking about the strategies that they are going to use to be able to achieve their outcomes and their outputs. Another thing to look at in the evidence tier section of the application is that they use relevant evidence, preferably from the last 6 years, and that the described evidence is having a meaningful positive effect in at least one of those key outcomes of interest. The final application component that we will ask you to look at is their organizational capacity. So as a peer reviewer, we really want you to be critical about their background and staffing, and we want to make sure that their program has sustainability and checks and balances put in place to be compliant and accountable. We like you to look at things like partnerships and sustainability that they have in the community that should be written into this application, and if they will be able to make matching funds secured. And we also want to make sure that they have a structure put in place that can ensure compliance with rules and regulations. On this slide, you see a handy toolkit for peer reviewers, and these toolkits will be shared with you in advance of your reviewing so that you can utilize the worksheet, the handbook, and the sentence starters to aid you in your review. So we ask that you fill out the conflict of interest form to ensure that we have a fair and unbiased peer review, and we want to make sure that everyone has access to these things. If you have been sent this information but you're having trouble getting into it, please contact us and let us know, because these will be things that are critical and vital in your peer reviewing. And so as we come to a close, again, we just want to say thank you so much for taking the time and the effort and energy to contribute to peer reviewing for these grants. We have some contact information there. You can see Shelley McAlpin, the executive director, and then myself and Erin Jarbeau are the ServeWyoming grant managers, and you can reach out to any of us with any questions that you might have through the course of this peer review process. You can reach us at that phone number that you see there, or you can always email us at acprograms@servewyoming.org. So that brings us to the end of our slideshow, and I hope that this was helpful and informative. Again, we really appreciate your time, and if there was anything that wasn't clear that you need demonstrated a little more specifically, please reach out to us. We are more than happy to assist you at any time. So we look forward to reading all of the comments that you have for our applicants, and we really appreciate your time as reviewers. Thanks.